Okay, so today we discuss what we call terms of trade. What is terms of trade? Terms of trade is simply we say this, that it's the rate of exchange. It's the rate of exchange. In other words, it's the ratio of the average price of exports over average price of imports expressed in index form. So in other words, terms of trade, if you look at simple formula, it's simply export prices over import prices into 100. Now, masla kya hota hai? What's the problem here is this, that export prices of, if I'm exporting many goods, so export prices can't be like one single export price. What you need to do is you need to find what we call a composite measure, which means basically what we do is this: we make an index of export prices, and we then compare that with index of import prices, like this one, and then we multiply it by 100. So what do you mean by export prices? So basically, simply something which we did in inflation. We made a basket of goods. We will make a basket of goods. We will have a base here, and base year में index क्या होता है? Base year index is always 100, and then we have what we call the current year, where we're going to look at prices. So basically, you have a basket of exports. You will use that to be, you'll give a value of it to 100, and you will track the value of those export prices. Similarly, you will make a basket of imported goods, and you will look at the base year prices. So in other words, terms of trade in base year will be what? Terms of trade in base year will be 100 over 100 times 100, which means terms of trade will be 100. So what is terms of trade? Terms of trade is simply the ratio of export prices to ratio of import prices, and they are average price. So therefore, you are trying to make an index, and that's how you calculate it. So I'll give you an example. So for example, if I give you these numbers, and I have it in my notes as well, but let's say your PX index of export prices was 100 in the base year, but it went to 105. And PM index of import prices went to 101. What does that mean? This basically means that export prices are going up by 5% and import prices are going up by 1%. So if export prices are rising faster than import prices, then if I find my terms of trade will turn out to be 105 over 101 times 100, which if I use my calculator, 105 over 101 times 100 will be 103.9. What is happening here, guys? The terms of trade, which was previously 100, because base year में क्या होता है? Base year में your terms of trade will always be 100. If terms of trade was 100 in the base year, and let's say in the next year, year one, my terms of trade, my prices of exports went from 100 to 105. Remember, base year में terms of trade will always be 100. Why? Because export prices will also be considered 100. Now from 100 they went to 105, and this import prices from 100 it went to 101. So basically, your base year index was 100. Your next year index, year one index was 103.9. If I tell you this, then you will say that because your terms of trade is going up, your export prices are rising. Let me write this: export prices are rising faster than import prices, right? And if this is happening when export prices are rising faster than import prices, because हुआ क्या था, base में आपकी 100 over 100 times 100, which means your terms of trade was 100. Next day, the export prices was rising by 5%, import prices are rising by 1%. That's why the terms of trade has gone from 100 to 103.9. And I wrote this here that if first year terms of trade is equal to 103.9, this means that on average a country is receiving relatively better prices for its exports than it is having to pay for its imports. So in this case, we say this: if the terms of trade has gone up more than 100, we say this, that the terms of trade have improved. the terms of trade have improved, and the reason is simply because the terms of trade has gone more than 100. Do you guys get that? Is there any question before we move on? So when the terms of trade value is more than 100 in the next year, we say terms of trade has gone up. And why has the terms of trade gone up? Because your export prices rose by 5%, import prices rose by 1%. And when I use the formula 105 over 101 times 100, I got myself 103.9. Let's do a case of export prices rising slower than import prices. What if this happens? So what if example 2, use this example 2, PX was like 102 and PM was like 105. And now your terms of trade is 102 over 105 times 100, which means 102 over 105 uh, will result in 97.14. So what happens is basically in this case, you can look at this, your terms of trade is 102. Sorry, can you please mute everyone? I'm gonna mute everyone to my way, which is this one. Okay, now everyone is muted and they will not be bothering anyone else. Okay, sorry. So guys, let me go back to it again. So what I'm saying is with this, guys, that if you look at this case now, in this case, what is happening is this, that your sorry. So what is happening here is just that your export prices were going up by 2%, import prices were going up by 5%. So 102 or 105 times 100, and I got myself 97.14. 97.14 means basically now my terms of trade, we'll say this, terms of trade have worsened. Why have they worsened? Because the value has gone below 100. Okay. So when you have a 97.14 value, we say that this means that on average, a country has to pay relatively higher prices for its imports than its exports. And in this case, terms of trade have worsened. Okay, does that make sense? If terms of trade has worsened, basically this means the value has gone below 100. So if somebody tells you terms of trade was like 100 in the first year, so this is year 1, and in the second year they say terms of trade has gone to 97.14, this means TOT, terms of trade, have worsened. And what is terms of trade? Terms of trade is simply the ratio of export prices to import prices. Okay, so that's the story for terms of trade. Is there any question before we move on, because it's an important thing that I want to explain? Any questions? um Haris is saying, don't get the last one, import greater than export. So Haris, I just used the formula. I said कि अगर आपकी PX 102 हो, 102 हो, and if your PM is like 105, I use the formula which is 10 PX or PM times 100. I use that formula and I got myself the value 97.14. Now 97.14 means import prices are rising faster than export prices. Now this means the terms of trade have worsened, but what it actually basically also means is something like this one, that if export prices, we say, are rising faster than import prices, okay, then terms of trade will improve. But what does that really mean? This means fewer exports have to be given up for a given volume of imports. So for example, if your terms of trade is like 102, I'm sorry, 10 105 over this one, 105 over 101, the last example I said, right? And you get 103 as the value. This basically means you are giving up less export for any volume of imports. And the reason is very simple. Let's say Pakistan is exporting, or rather, Japanese are exporting cars, but importing, let's say, vegetables. The import prices are very few. or very less, but export prices a lot more. So if export prices are more than import prices, then for any given car, you are giving up, for any given sort of vegetables, you are giving a very few amount of number of cars. So the idea goes this, that if your export prices are much lower than if your export prices are much better than export import prices, then basically that country will have to give up fewer exports for any volume of imports. But what if your terms of trade was like below 100, like 97.9? Now if I give you this kind of a value, you will say this, that if import prices if import prices are much more than export prices, then for any given level of import, a country has to give up a lot of its export. So Pakistan, because it exports textile, it has to give up a lot of textile for any given car, number of cars that they get, or any given number of, example, computers that they get, because that is much more of value. Now, there is an important story that I want to tell you here, that what does terms of trade tell you? And the answer is, terms of trade only tells you the ratio of prices. It does not tell you anything about quantity. It does not tell you anything about elasticity and all that. All it tells you is your ratio of export prices to ratio of import prices. And that's why, can I make any judgment about efficiency? Well, terms of trade can affect your prices, your efficiency can affect your prices. But right now we're just looking at terms of trade. We say that value is more than 100. If the value is more than 100, we say terms of trade is going up. If the value is less than 100, we say terms of trade is going down. If the value is more than 100, which means that export prices are better than import prices, and that's why you're giving up less of your exports for any given level of imports. And if the value is less than 100, you are giving up more of your exports for any given value of import. So that's the only thing that I'm going to make a judgment about. One more thing I want to quickly talk about is that sometimes they ask you, what are the factors that can affect terms of trade? What are the factors? What are the things that can affect terms of trade in a country? So the answer to is there are many factors. The first factor that we'll look at is what we call exchange rate. If your exchange rate in a country is basically changing, so for example, if there's a change in exchange rate, what will happen? We said this, let's say exchange rate of a country goes up. If the exchange rate goes up, we say exports become expensive and imports become cheaper. Remember, हमने कहा था, for example, if your exchange rate is like rupees 100 is equal to 1. In fact, let's talk about dollars and pounds. Okay, what if your exchange is $1 is equal to £1? Okay, and what if this becomes $2 is equal to £1? This means pound is becoming expensive, or pound is raising in price, because for every pound now you get $2 worth of good. For every pound previously you were getting $1 worth of good. So if pound becomes goes higher in value, exchange rate goes up, exports become expensive, imports become cheaper, and that basically means your uh, formula wise, px over pm is the formula. So px will go up, pm will go down, and one could argue this, the terms of trade will go up. Remember, because terms of trade ka formula kya tha? Px over pm. So simply, if the exchange rate goes up, exports become expensive, imports become cheaper, and that will make my terms of trade to go up. What will happen in quantity, guys? And the answer is we don't know, because quantity is a function of elasticity, which we haven't discussed. But do we get this idea of how exchange rate can basically make the terms of trade go up? Similarly, inflation is another question, another factor that can affect your terms of trade. So look at this, guys. If your let me choose, yeah, if your price level of a country goes up, so Pakistan, let's say, experiences inflation, what will happen to Pakistan's terms of trade? And the answer is PX will go up, because exports will become expensive. It's going to be more expensive to make your exports. PM will go down. Why will PM go down? Well, simply because relatively now, as compared to other countries, your imports are becoming sort of the imports will be cheaper than the domestic goods. And as a result of that, Px over Pm formula wise, Px is going up, Pm is going down, and the terms of trade is going up because the denominator is becoming smaller and the numerator is becoming bigger. But won't it be affected by elasticity? Anik, elasticity affects your quantity. Remember, price times quantity. So abhi terms of trade ka simply kya hai? Terms of trade has a limitation. And the biggest limitation of terms of trade is that it only tells you the ratio of prices. It doesn't tell you the revenue that you make from your exports and imports. That's what we call balance of trade. Terms of trade is simply the ratio of prices. So is terms of trade um, a very strong sort of framework to look at? And the answer is not necessarily, because Surantu inflation buri cheez hai. If inflation is a bad thing, and then suddenly if you're looking at it that prices are going up and people are actually, you're looking at terms of trade to go up, this means that the fact that inflation is a bad thing and it makes the terms of trade to go up, I will be a little wary of it. I'll be like, you know what? What's the usefulness of terms of trade? Because it's only showing us your ratio of prices. And as a result, sooner we'll talk about it, that terms of trade as a stand-alone way to look at things may not be good. You may need to look at something else along with terms of trade for our analysis to be complete. Okay. Now, moving on, if I could move on to the next factor, which is basically another reason why terms of trade can sort of change, could be because of demand for exports and imports. So, for example, guys, what if I tell you that the demand for exports go up? If demand for exports go up, we know when a demand goes up, price goes up. Price of exports go up, what will happen to your terms of trade? Anyone can tell me what will happen to terms of trade if the price of exports go up? Terms of trade should? Anyone? Exactly. Terms of trade should go up. TOT should go up. Why? Because PX over PM, if PX is going up, PM is constant, TOT should go up. Great. That's exactly what will happen. Similarly, rising productivity. Now, productivity rise is a good thing, but what will productivity rise do to your terms of trade? So, if productivity goes up, we say cost of production will fall. Isn't that true? Higher productivity means cost of production falls. Cost of production fall, price of exports can go down. Price of exports goes down, TOT will go down. When productivity is a good thing, TOT is going down. So if somebody say, oh my God, terms of trade are going down, is that bad news? I will say not necessarily. Ultimately, what you need to look at whether the country is making more revenue or not. And revenue is simply price times quantity. So price is not the only variable we look at. We look at price times quantity. That will basically be an important analysis. But right now, terms of trade is only one-sided analysis because it looks at only the prices. Okay. Then comes your basically, what your change in income. If, for example, an economy's income go up, let's say a country is becoming richer. If a country is becoming richer, then one could argue this, that they will buy more imports. When that they will buy more imports, you can argue this. One could argue this, that rising sort of demand for imports means price of imports should go up. Why? Because demand goes up, price goes up. If price goes up, automatically PX over PM may, given this is constant, PM is going up, terms of trade will actually going to worsen. So this is another factor that can make the terms of trade too. So a very important question that comes in exam is that what is terms of trade? So you need to talk about the formula for terms of trade. You need to talk about basically how it's the index of export prices to index of import prices times 100, and then talk about the terms of trade improving means value going more than 100. Terms of trade going down means value going less than 100. And then you talk about the idea that there are various factors that can make the terms of trade to change, such as exchange rate, inflation, demand for exports and imports, productivity, and changes in income. Make sense? So this is what the discussion about terms of trade is. Is there any question before we move on? Got it? Does that make sense? Um, so formula is very simple. So what is terms of trade? Just Haris is asking a question basically to redefine terms of trade. Terms of trade, Haris, is simply index of export prices over index of import prices. How do we make an index? जिस तरह हमने inflation में index बनाया था, in an inflation chapter, we said that a country decides a basket of goods, and then they look at the basket of goods in the base year, and then look at the basket of goods in the current year. Why do you make a basket of goods? Because you are finding average prices for exports. Now there's tons and tons of exports that you're doing and tons of imports that you're doing. So you need to only look at fewer goods by making a basket according to the relative importance. That's why in my formula, simple formula, I said PX over PM is my terms of trade times 100 will be the formula. Yep. So that's what it is. Somebody's asking me, Saud is asking me, in inflation, if exports rising and import are declining, there will be. Saud, are you talking about export prices or import prices? Because in inflation, we said this. In inflation, we said this, that if exports are, if inflation goes up, exports become expensive, imports become cheaper. And the formula is only PX or PM. So exports are, denominator is going down, numerator is going up, and that's why terms of trade is going up. That's what it is. Does that make sense, guys? Are we good? Is everyone clear? I want to show you. I want to show you exam questions for this one so that we can have a fair understanding of how this gets tested. You need to wait for 1 minute before I show you the exam questions. Let's look at this question. What will definitely lead to an improvement in the terms of trade? What you guys think of this? What will basically lead to an improvement in the terms of trade? If I may ask you. D. Exactly. So yeah, if export prices go up, import prices stays the same, PX over PM, PX is going up, PM is the same, you will see terms of trade to go up. Exactly, D is the right answer. Export prices fall, import prices go up, wrong. Export prices rise by the same amount, and import prices, PTOT, will be unchanged. Export prices rise slower than, will also be wrong. So best answer is D. Awesome. PX goes up, PM stays the same, terms of trade will go up. Do you guys get that? Does that make sense? So that's what it is. Let's look at another question. Okay. In the terms of trade, in a developing country fell from 90 um, to 80 in 2015. So it's falling from 90 to 80 in 2015. Assuming that the index of its export prices, I'm sorry, index of its import prices remained at 110. So PM is PX or PM is this. Right now, TOT is equal to 80. Previously, it was 90, which was also PX or PM, right? And it was such that your import prices have remained at import prices have remained at 110. Makes sense? So this basically means 110, and this basically means 110. Between the, what happened to its export prices? If I write PX is equal to basically 80, and that is equal to 90. So if somebody can tell me, use a calculator, what will be the answer? Anyone? B fell by 11. How'd you guys get that? So if I get 90 times, let me use a calculator. 90 times 110, that's 9900 over, by the way, this is 9900, and this one is 80 times 110, that is 8800. That basically means 99 minus 88, it's 11. Remember, this is in thousands, so I need to, it's like px over pm times 100. So px over pm times 100, so that's why 11 is the answer. I'm going to divide this by, so the right answer, it's basically, uh, if 90 was the beginning year and it went to 80, I'm looking at it is going to fall by 11. Okay, so B is the right answer. So does that make sense to everyone? Let me solve it again. Remember, px over pm times 100 is the formula for terms of trade. So I should say 90 over 100 times pm. Pm is right now 110. So I should just say 90 over 100 times 110. I'm looking at this to be 99. So it was 99 in 2010, right? And in 2015, the value is basically 88. So it's gone down from 99 to 88. And that's why it has fallen by 11. So why will we not take the zeros in the answer? Well, the formula is Muhammad Ali is px over pm times 100. So if you use the whole formula, the reason why I did this is because I should have divided this by 100. This should have been divided by 100, and this should also be divided by 100. Or in other words, this should be divided by 100, and this should also be divided by 100. So that's why it's done, not done properly. This is done properly. Px over pm times 100 is equal to terms of rate. Okay, so it fell by 11. That's the right answer. Okay, let me show you another question quickly. The 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 index for a country's terms of trade changed from 100 to 104. So the terms of trade is going up. What could have caused this change? Anyone? C. Good job. Because we said that if the exchange rate goes up, exports become expensive, imports become cheaper, and that will make px over pm. Px is going up, pm is going down, so terms of trade will go up. Exactly. So C is the right answer. You guys are very good. Awesome. C is the right answer. Are we good? Let's move on to show the next question. So in this question, they're saying that in 2005, your index of import price was 48.1, while index of export price was like 57.57. 2010 was your base year, guys. What happened in 2015? It's important to look at 2015 after the base year. If you look at 2015 after the base year, what is happening is this, that your value will now become 120.8 over 122.4 times 100. Okay, so your terms of trade will become, for example, I'm just looking at first the 2015, but 120.8 divided by 122.4 is going to be 98.6, right? But there's one more thing which is happening, which is that what is happening in this 2005? In 2005, what is happening is this, that if I look at terms of trade, the terms of trade will be 57 over 48.1 times 100. So 57 divided by 48.1 into 100 makes it 118.50. So what is happening to my terms of trade? Terms of trade has gone from 118.50 to 98.6, which means my terms of trade have worsened. Does that make sense? When I calculated, my terms of trade has gone down. I can explain that to, again, basically, I found out the simple formula. I was like a PX over PM times 100 and PX over PM times 100. So 2015 May, my terms of trade was 98.6. 2005 May, my terms of trade is 118.5. And the base year, of course, was 100. So इधर क्या हो रहा है कि we're looking as compared to base year, the prices in 2005 was lower. So that's what it is. So you simple using formula, my terms of trade if 2005 was 118.5 and in 2015 it's 98.6, I will say my TOT is going down. Okay, do we get that? Does that make sense? Option A is something I want to explain tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a class on balance of payment and also balance of trade, where we will be able to explain option A better. But right now I'll say if option is wrong, A is wrong. Okay. Abdul Rafiq, you gotta ask me this question in so that everyone can read this. But basically, exchange rate can make can it basically the answer for this one is basically yes. If exchange rate can make the export and import revenue to change, but that basically depends on elasticity of demand. So while your observation is right, but we don't know the elasticity of demand. Elasticity determines revenue. Remember, if the price goes up and if the good is elastic, then your revenue may go down, in fact. Okay. Last question is this one. Uh, the terms of trade of a country for a country have improved. Which combination of price behavior would have caused this? So remember, if terms of trade has gone up, PX over PM, may PX should go up or relative to PM. So if it's increased by 4%, but increased by 6%, I should not go for it. It should increase by more. PX should be greater than PM. Okay. Price of exports is going down, and this is unchanged. Going down by 4%, going down by 6%. So this is the best answer. If this goes down by 4%, but this goes down by much more, I'll say PX is falling by much less than PM, which is falling as well. And as a result, my terms of trade should go up. Okay. Why is this wrong? Because if this is unchanged and denominator is becoming bigger, terms of trade will fall. Here, denominator is again rising faster than the numerator, so terms of trade will fall. Okay. And either the numerator is falling while the denominator is unchanged, and therefore terms of trade will fall. A is the right answer, with the terms of trade will actually go up. Okay, guys, that's it for today. Tomorrow we'll look at balance of payment. I'm going to share the recording of this class on YouTube as well, so that everyone can sort of revise. And by the way, I shared with you something called tribe.alt academy. I want you guys to join that. I think tribe.altacademy.com, if I'm not mistaken. But basically, you should join that. I think this is the message that I sent to everyone. So do that for, yeah, sorry, tribe.altacademy.org is what I want to look at. Okay.